Hey, welcome to the message for this week, guys. We're going to be tackling a little bit about when people tell you to grow up. A lot of people tell you to grow up, but then don't really give you any advice on how to do so. So here, I've got my friend.
My name is Sym Simpson. I'm one of the people that will be opening up the church with Mitch. I've been friends with Mitch for as long as I remember, and I'm very glad to be here.
Yeah, and we're both so excited to share this message with you today. We spent this past week working on it. So we hope you enjoy it, and I will see you guys next week. Bye. So I don't know if it was this way for you guys growing up, but I think a lot of the times from peers or from people around me, I just heard like this phrase, grow up, man. Like, just grow up. You need to stop taking it so seriously. Grow up. And I think we're told that a lot as a kid. But I think a lot of parents also have this idea of, nah, you need to stay children. So there's this conflict that we have from even the earliest stages of life of the difference between growing up and staying a child. And I know for me, my situation, I'm really trying to fight this battle between growing up and taking on more responsibility than also wanting to have less responsibility in some aspects, stay a child in some aspects, but grow up in the other. But it's just not something that can always happen.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's more of a seamless process. For like me, I feel like I want to embrace the growing up process, but at this point in time, I'm getting used to it. I've always wanted to be grown up as a child. I never wanted to cherish my childhood because I felt like it was boring. And growing up seemed so much cooler, but as I am recently 18, I feel like I did want to cherish the moments, looking back on it, like cherish my childhood, enjoy it more, and stop focusing on like the growing up aspect. But the seamless transition I did from college, I feel like I've done a lot of growing up beforehand, and that this growing up process for myself is not as hard as I thought it would be.
Yeah. So I'm going to read a passage from Ephesians 4, verses 15 and 16. The author here is Paul, and Paul is writing to a group of Christians in the Ephesia territory. And he says this. He says, rather, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part is working properly, makes the body grow so that it builds itself up in love. So the part that I really want to focus on and draw out here is Paul does say grow up. He says we are to grow up in every way, but then he continues to say grow up into Christ. There's this idea of not necessarily just growing up, but growing toward, growing to something. And so we're going to tackle 5 different ways of areas for you to start growing. We're going to talk about physical, mental, emotional, relational, and spiritual. So you want to kick us off with the physical?
Yeah, but relating back to Ephesians, going off like growing into God, you never can go straight up into heaven. You more have to take steps towards God and certain things. So that relates to physical growth too. You can never go straight into whatever body type you need. You can only take step towards it. And so it's like bodybuilding. I've been doing it for 2 years. I was a lot better than I was before, but I'm nowhere near where I want to be. And that growth is just keep taking steps towards, take baby steps. As long as you're growing, it doesn't matter how long it takes it. Maybe it deteriorates you from your goal, but you'll still get there in time.
Yeah. And then this physical growth, there's this difference between just growing into somebody else or growing into somebody who you're not intended to be, right? You can even look at athletes, where even within a different sport, there's different types of people that need to play football, different types of people that need to play basketball and whatnot. But even within that, there's a growth where each position has its own, and you need to find what position you're going to play. Now, we don't necessarily mean sports all the time. Some people are called to play sports, but just whatever you grow into. For me, I need to make sure that I'm healthy at all times so that one day when I go around and start traveling as a preacher, then I'm able to stay healthy and be the most effective that I can be.
For me, it's more of just like for longevity. I've always lived a rather unhealthy life, and I feel like if I continue down that road, I won't have a very very long future. So for me, it's more of long-term longevity and just being around in life longer to enjoy it. So that's what I'm working towards.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that there's a lot, when we were preparing this, we were noticing all the different connections that there were between the different aspects of growth. But I think one of the biggest relationships is this growth between physical and mental. And a lot of people relate this mental growth to like education or to like being in school. But there's a lot of different ways to learn outside of that. I believe that as long as you have the desire to learn, then you will be growing in that aspect. It doesn't necessarily have to be school.
Yeah, because mental growth and physical growth are just like one and the same. You know what your body needs, and the mind and body connection for like you said, like you can for mind and body, you can just know what your body wants to do, what it desires to do, and if you don't have that fire in your heart to do something, you're never gonna grow. So I like to see that mental growth is more important than most of the physical growth and where you're going, because you can have a lot of mental growth for a short period of time, but it'll just fade away, and your growth will just fade away as well. Yeah. So I feel like I think the longevity of mental growth is more important than the longevity of physical growth.
Yeah, that's a great point. And also playing off of this, I think that another great connection between the growths is this connection between mental growth and emotional growth. There's a lot. I can look back at my life, and when I was younger in elementary school, I had a lot of anger problems. And I had to go to a counselor to try and get that fixed. And there's a lot of growth that's happened, of course, outside of elementary school to now, but I can look back at how the counseling was able to direct me and help me grow toward this place of where I am now.
So for me, it's a completely different opposites. I think our emotional growths are different because I was always a happy-go-lucky child. I let people do whatever they wanted. Like, I feel like I let them take advantage of me in some situations, but I feel like that's how I learned. Yeah. And more, I made a lot of friends. I had a very huge friend groups, and when you have a lot of friend groups, then and a lot of people in your friend group, then there's definitely gonna be people who you don't have to trust, or different people that are not share the same values as you, and you learn from just letting people walk over you, and that's how I feel like my emotional growth came from.
Wow. So yeah, like two completely different forms of growth, and I think that there's this outcome that we all get to, right? Where you and I are not even nearly as similar now emotionally as we may appear to seem. But there's this outcome of where we're headed, where there's a different path to get there for each person. You just have to figure out what path you're on and continue to go down it. But moving into the next, I think that there's a lot where emotionally you have to learn so that you can develop in your relationships as well. And you do this example better than I do. He introduced me to this concept in this illustration earlier this week, so go ahead and share it.
Well, for relationships, I'm thinking of a triangle, and at the top of the triangle, there is God, and at the two bases, there is you and your partner. And as you get closer to our common goal, in this case is God, you're getting closer to each other, and the triangle is getting smaller. And I feel like that's a perfect recipe for a relationship. The common goal doesn't always have to be God, but for since it's a sermon, the common goal is God, and you grow spiritually, you grow emotionally, you grow towards each other. But I feel like in relationships, the common goal, you should be looking to grow towards a common goal rather than to grow into that person. Because growing towards a common goal and going up the triangle and making it smaller and going towards a common goal, you're seamlessly growing into that person. Yeah. And it's more or less you're not focusing on that person, more or less you're focusing on how you and that person can reach that common goal.
Yeah. And I think that it's really cool where when you start down at the base of the triangle, where not only are you growing closer to your common goal, but you're also growing closer simultaneously to that other person. So I think it's something that's so powerful. And then the last topic we want to talk about is the spiritual growth. And I just want you guys to embrace spiritual growth openly. There's many different ways to grow spiritually, and I think it's something where we don't want to get bogged down in doing things an orthodox way. So I hope that you guys are able to use these 5 different types of growth, and I hope it's something that everybody takes advantage of. If you don't know where to start with your growth, hopefully you have a better idea now of 5 different places where you can start to grow. And I think for a lot of them, experience is key. and just being in there and learning from the experience.
Especially for like spiritual growth, yeah. Because my take on spiritual growth is a lot different than yours because I have an unorthodox way of connecting to God. I don't really go to church like you do. I don't read the Bible as much as you do. I don't do YouTube videos or sermons like you do. But I feel like my connection to God is almost, if not the same strength as your connection to God. So just because I'm not living the Christian lifestyle doesn't mean I'm not a Christian.
Right. Yeah, and there's this idea where our morals that we have kind of direct us where we're going. And as long as we're abiding by these morals, we're abiding by these standards that we hold for ourselves, there's a lot of growth that can still happen. So I hope you guys are encouraged by this, and I hope that you're able to put it into practice in your lives. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's great to have Sym down. We go to different schools now, but it's always great to see him and hang out.
Thank you guys for having me. I enjoyed my time. Bye.